The Royal Guard consists of 5 individuals whose combined power supposedly surpasses the entirety of the Gotei 13. They exist within the Soul King's palace, elevated way above the Serite, both literally and figuratively. When Sosuke Aizen, one of the most dangerous threats to the existence of the Soul Society in the 3 realms, waged his war against the Gotei 13, Squad Zero did absolutely nothing. Aizen spent over a century manipulating events from the shadows. He holified 8 Shinigami, including 4 captains, slaughtered the Central 46, orchestrated Rukia's execution, and revealed his treachery before escaping to Hueco Mundo and building an army of Arrancar. His goal was to sacrifice 100,000 souls from Karakura Town in order to create the Oken, so that he could breach the 72 protective barriers surrounding the royal palace so that he could dethrone the Soul King himself. The threat couldn't have been more dangerous, but yet the Zero Division remained in their palace, drinking tea and crafting clothing while the Gotei 13 scrambled to survive. Why would the supposed protectors of the realm's highest authority sit idly while someone actively plotted to murder their Soul King? The answers to all of this lie in how the Soul Society operates. It's a truth that only becomes apparent after the Vandenreich's devastating first assault on the Serite during the 1000-year Blood War arc. When the Royal Guard finally descend on the Serite following Yamamoto's death at the hands of Yhwach and the Sternritter, Siphon is furious. The captain of the 2nd Division screams at them for only turning up now, for not helping when they were under attack. It's a raw and unfiltered moment of anger. It's what you'd expect from a military leader who just watched her head captain get cut in half and her comrades be slaughtered. Tenjiro Korinji's response to her is brutal. He appears behind her, restrains her with just 2 fingers and his thumb, and delivers a lecture that reveals everything about the Royal Guard's philosophy. He tells her that it's ridiculous that the great Gotei 13 failed in their duty to protect the Serite. He contrasts this with the Zero Division's duty, which is to protect the royal palace. Then he asks what kind of captain cries for help because they're unable to do their job themselves. He then refers to her as an embarrassment. This wasn't just Korinji being callous in the moment. An official statement published within Weekly Shonen Jump issue 8 of 2012 confirms that the Royal Guard don't interfere with the Gotei 13's affairs. The exact quote is, "Since protecting the Soul King, whose existence serves as the linchpin of the 3 worlds, is the primary purpose of the Royal Guard, they do not interfere in the Gotei 13's affairs and the defense of the Soul Society, even against major threats like Sosuke Aizen and his Arrancar army." The Gotei 13 protects the Soul Society and maintains the balance of souls between the realms. Squad Zero protects the Soul King. These are totally separate jurisdictions, responsibilities, and problems. Aizen was the Gotei 13's problem, full stop. Here's what makes Aizen's situation different from Yhwach's invasion. Aizen in fact couldn't actually reach the Soul King's palace. The Royal Realm exists in a separate dimension protected by 72 spiritual barriers that prevent entry. There are only 2 ways to breach these barriers. The first is through an Oken, a key created either through the sacrifice of 100,000 souls in a Jureichi, a concentrated spirit zone like Karakura Town, or by having one imparted into your bones by the Soul King himself. The second method is only accessible to those who are members of the Royal Guard, since each of them carries the Oken within their very skeletal structure. Aizen hadn't created his Oken yet. He was still attempting to gather the necessary components. His entire plan hinged on defeating the Gotei 13, sacrificing Karakura Town's population, and only then ascending to challenge Squad Zero. Until that moment arrived, he physically could not reach them. The Royal Guard not intervening with Aizen wasn't out of arrogance or negligence. In their perspective, it was simple logic. A threat that cannot reach you is not yet your problem. The Gotei 13 existed specifically to handle threats within the Soul Society and maintain balance across the realms. If they had failed, only then would the Royal Guard have intervened. So at the moment where Aizen would arrive at their doorstep with his newly forged Oken, Ichibei, the commander of Squad Zero, embodies this mentality completely. The light novels reveal that he doesn't care about threats until they directly attack the Soul King. Yhwach attacked the royal palace, so Ichibei got involved. Aizen was still in the Serite and the world of the living, so Aizen remained someone else's concern. And you have to remember, Yhwach actually killed the leader of the Gotei 13, Yamamoto. Zero. This was another key reason as to why Squad Zero intervened. Aizen didn't kill the head captain. You could argue that the Royal Guard's approach is very cold. They were prepared to let Karakura Town burn. 100,000 innocent souls would have been sacrificed before they had even lifted a finger. Even massacring that many souls wouldn't have brought Aizen within their jurisdiction. It's only at that precise moment where Aizen arrives within the royal palace where they would actually intervene. The Royal Guard's reasoning does expose an uncomfortable pattern within the history of the Soul Society. The Gotei 13 has faced existential threats multiple times. Go back to 1000 years ago during the original conflict with the Quincy. It took the combined efforts of all of the original Gotei 13 captains, including a younger two-armed Yamamoto at full power, to defeat Yhwach. They were described as far more ruthless back then, willing to do whatever it took to win. Even so, they weren't able to permanently destroy Yhwach and his army as they returned in the present time. When Aizen launched his assault, the Gotei 13 was completely outclassed. Yamamoto himself was neutralized by Wonderwise, a modified Arrancar created specifically to seal Ryujin Jaka's flames. The entire Captain Corps plus the Vizard couldn't stop Aizen. He cut them all down while barely trying. The situation was so desperate that Ichigo, a substitute Shinigami who'd been fighting for barely a year, had to transcend normal power levels and sacrifice his own abilities to end the threat of Aizen. Then came the 1000-year Blood War arc, 19 months after Aizen's defeat. The Vandenreich emerged from the shadows and launched their first invasion of the Serite. It was a slaughter as the Sternritter stole Bankai, massacred countless Shinigami, and Yhwach personally killed Yamamoto before vaporizing his body with a barrage of holy arrows. It was only after the Gotei 13 had completely failed their duty once again and Ichigo being unable to help, that was when the Royal Guard finally appeared. When Soifon confronted them about not helping during the first Sternritter invasion, Kirinji's response was essentially do your job better. But when the Royal Guard faced Yhwach's elite Schutzstaffel later in the arc, they got demolished. Nimaya killed the Schutzstaffel initially, but Yhwach revived them as they tore through Squad Zero. This is both in the manga and extended anime version of events. The Gotei 13 then had to invade the royal palace to save the Soul King and defeat Yhwach. This is the same Gotei 13 that Kirinji called an embarrassment, who ended up doing the Royal Guard's job for them. There's another critical distinction between Aizen and Yhwach which influenced Squad Zero's response. It's the ultimate objectives of each of these villains, which differed in fundamental ways. Aizen wanted to replace the Soul King. His goal was to sit atop of the throne of heaven, to replace the vacant ruler and become the true god of the world. This is actually something that the Royal Guard might have tolerated, perhaps even facilitated. The novels reveal that Ichibei doesn't particularly care who serves as the Soul King, only that someone fulfills the role. He was prepared to seal Ichigo as a replacement if necessary. He allowed Yhwach's corpse to become the new Soul King after the war. But there is a bit of an issue with Aizen replacing the Soul King. He needs to first be a Soul King candidate, and the only known Soul King candidates that we know of within the series are Ichigo, Hikone, and possibly Ginjo Kugo. And I highly doubt that Aizen will be able to convince the Royal Guard that he is more of a suitable ruler than a mindless linchpin with no sentience. Yhwach, on the other hand, wanted to destroy the current world order entirely. His endgame wasn't just to replace the Soul King, it was to absorb him, then eliminate the distinction between life and death so that he could merge all of the realms into one, fundamentally reverting the cosmology of Bleach to its primordial state. This directly threatens the foundation of reality itself, the cycle of souls, the balance between worlds. Everything that Squad Zero exists to protect would be annihilated. When Aizen made his move, he was attempting to reach the royal palace through proper channels by creating an Oken. He intended to challenge the system from within. Yhwach simply invaded with overwhelming force and literally ripped the Soul King from his throne, controlling Ichigo to cut the Soul King in half and then absorbing his power. So yeah, it makes sense why Squad Zero took the threat of Yhwach far more seriously than Aizen. When Squad Zero arrived in the Serite after the Vandenreich's first invasion had left the Gotei 13 in ruins, with Yamamoto dead, Byakuya near death, countless other officers cut down, Kirinji didn't offer condolences or tactical support. He condescendingly asked the surviving Shinigami if they were eating right and getting enough sleep, right after they'd been humiliated by the Sternritter. The Zero Division entered with a literal fanfare. Senjumaru played musical instruments while the Gotei 13 was surrounded by corpse corpses and ruins. They showed up not to help with the immediate crisis, but to collect Ichigo, Rukia, Renji, and Byakuya for their own purposes at the royal palace. When they took the injured Shinigami, Cringy specifically told Unohana, the greatest healer in the history of the Soul Society, that Byakuya would definitely die if he stayed because she couldn't get the job done. This same arrogance informed their non-response to Aizen. They believed themselves above such concerns. They were confident that if Aizen somehow created his Oken and reached the royal palace, they would be able to handle him. After all 5 members of the Zero Division are stronger than the entire might of the Gotei 13. Their confidence was however shattered when Yhwach launched his assault on the royal palace during the second phase of the 1000-year Blood War arc. The Schutzstaffel carved through the Zero Division. Ichibei himself was defeated by Yhwach's ability the Almighty after an intense battle where he genuinely believed he had the upper hand. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, the Royal Guard needed the Gotei 13's intervention to survive. One final consideration to all of this is Ichigo Kurosaki's involvement, which complicates everything. The Royal Guard seems to have been monitoring the situation from afar. They knew about the Arrancar invasion, about Aizen's power level, and the fake Karakura town gambit. They also knew that a unique hybrid being with Shinigami, Hollow, Quincy, Fullbringer, and human components was actively fighting against Aizen. Ichigo represented a wild card that couldn't be easily predicted. His growth rate was absurd, his potential seemed unlimited, and most importantly, he had succeeded where the entire Gotei 13 had failed. Would Squad Zero have intervened if Ichigo lost and Aizen created the Oken? Most likely yes. Ichibei and his squad would have engaged Aizen at the palace gates, attempting to stop him before he could reach the Soul King. But as long as Ichigo remained in play, and as long as there was a chance that the Gotei 13 side could win without Royal Guard involvement, Squad Zero had no reason to break their cardinal rule. The realm's ultimate protectors only protect their specific realm. The Gotei 13 have their duties, and these Zero Division have their duties. I do have a video on the channel where I discuss the possibility of Aizen facing off against the Zero Division, and I even have an entire video I recently made where I discuss Ichibei versus Hogyoku Evolved Aizen, so definitely check those videos out after this one. It's great speculation, especially for those of you who have been wondering what would happen if Aizen won against Ichigo. But yeah, we've reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What are your thoughts about why the Royal Guard didn't help the Gotei 13 against Aizen? If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention, then let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this one, and I look forward to seeing you in my next Bleach video.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.